Hey, deserving listeners, this is Chapter 2 in our deep dive on the psychology of the Menendez brothers. So Berto has been leading the way, and he's doing a great job, which is bad news for him because that means he's going to be doing more of these, which I'm really quite happy with.
I should have broken the dishes, is what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So what we're going to do in this chapter is we're going to go back to the start. We're going to learn a little bit of the family background. But to catch us up a little bit where we left off, essentially what we have learned so far is that there was a gruesome murder on August 20th of 1989. By the way, trigger alert, we will be discussing murderous things, violent things, potentially some abuse, and so know that that will be discussed in this episode. And so we learned that there was this murder. We also learned that these two brothers, Eric and Lyle Menendez, are the ones that they themselves say killed their parents. And they killed them with shotguns, and it was this gruesome, the cops said it was one of the most gruesome things they've ever seen. And we also know that a few months later, Eric, the younger brother, confessed to his therapist that he had done this, that him and his brother had done this. And we also know that they had gone, because they were rich, they were inheriting a lot of money, and they were spending a lot of this money. But we don't know, like, who are they? Where do they come from? Why did they even do this, right? So we're going to explore their family background a bit and see if this can illuminate anything for us. All right, so the father, Jose, is originally from Cuba. He was born in Cuba. He came from an affluent family in Cuba. And this was before the revolution, so before Fidel Castro took over. Cuba, just like a lot of South America, was a colonized area of the world, which means that it came from a colonial tradition of what I would call a hierarchy of living, where folks that were of the descent, more direct descent from the colonizers, were generally richer, generally more respected, more well off. This was certainly true back in the old days.
And you know this firsthand because you did DNA analysis and found that you're mostly colonizer.
Yes, this is true. I'm like 70% colonizer, and so
meaning Spanish,
right? From Spain.
Yeah,
That's right. And so Cuba, of course, being in the Caribbean, was also a destination for those Spanish early Spanish colonizers, and also a lot of slave trade, right? So Cuba has the same kind of tradition that a lot of these Central and South American countries have. At the time, before the revolution, huge wealth disparity. There were the ones with the money, and there were the ones without the money. And the ones with the money were living a pretty good life. You know, Cuba, you'll remember, like in the mob movies, like The Godfather and stuff, Cuba was like...
Godfather 2,
yeah.
Cuba is...
It's like the destination.
Yeah, and the revolution happens while Michael Corleone is in Cuba. Yeah.
Right. So there's... So this family, picture that. This family was living a nice lifestyle in Cuba. They had access to the country clubs. They were very well off. And Jose is born in 1944.
He is exactly my parents' age.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
So he's exactly my parents' age, and I'm exactly Eric's age.
Right.
Wait, am I Eric? Wait, no.
You might be Eric. You wear the same kind of preppy shirt. So Jose is reputed to be a good athlete. His father actually was an athlete. He was a soccer player.
I mean, not to get weird, but this is, my dad is a person of color, and my dad's dad was a renowned athlete in Washington State.
You were an athlete.
Right, and my dad was an athlete. So this is more and more looking like I'm Eric. Yeah.
And so Jose's father was an athlete. He was apparently a famed soccer player in Cuba. After he stopped being a soccer player, what job do you think he might have gone into after soccer playing?
Ball making.
He became an accountant, as one does, But apparently, did very well for themselves. They were quite wealthy. I don't know if they came from old money. I'm not sure. And then the mother was also a good athlete. She was a swimmer, apparently really good swimmer, stuff like that. And they had a very good existence in Cuba.
This is the dad's parents.
This is Jose, the dad's parents.
Okay.
And then Jose is there. And he is there till he is 15 years old, actually.
Oh, like you.
Basically. So am I Jose? Am I Jose Menendez? Yeah. That's interesting. So many parallels. All right. And why do you think...
Does that make you my dad?
Yeah, I am your father. Why do you think he might have been sent to the States at age 15? He was sent alone.
To get away from the revolution?
Yeah. Basically, what was happening is, of course, they were coming after everyone with money, and they had money, and they were trying to repossess their stuff. Apparently, Jose was very vocal, anti-revolution, very vocal, which could be very dangerous and stuff. So they sent him off to United States. He came up here with little money. That's the other thing. So they were very well off in Cuba, but that didn't translate over here because they lost, basically, the government took most of that money. So Jose came here to become an immigrant and try to pull himself up by the bootstraps. He attends Southern Illinois University on a swimming scholarship. He apparently was a really good swimmer as well. In fact, in Cuba, that was his sport.
Weren't you a swimmer?
I was a swimmer. And I moved here at 15 to swim.
You are my dad.
And I am an Olympian. Oh, wait, I'm not an Olympian. But he wasn't in the Olympics either, so I could be your father still.
Have you been murdered before? By me?
Not yet.
Okay.
But
it's never too late.
never too late. Yeah. August is coming up.
August is coming up.
All right. So, so he's a great athlete. And, to get a swimming scholarship, it's not like the top college in the country, but it's a swimming scholarship. You have to be good. So he's doing that. While he's doing this, he meets, to answer your question in our previous episode, Kitty. Mary Louise Kitty. Yeah. So she has a name that's not Kitty, but everyone calls her Kitty.
Okay.
Everyone knew her as Kitty.
Right.
Yeah. So Mary Louise Anderson, also known as Kitty. So from here on out, Kitty Anderson. She's this kind of glamorous. She's described as glamorous. She had won like a beauty pageant when she was, younger and stuff. And she likes. I think she likes the idea of the Jose presents this like strong personality and stuff. So like they get along great initially, and they fall in love. And Kitty was born in Illinois, so she was from there. She was homegrown there. And had been, like I said, a beauty pageant winner. So this is funny. Everyone points this out. Probably because in general, there's not a ton of data about their parents' childhoods. And that just is one of the bits of information, right? But it does stand out a little bit because basically in the mythology that we're going to start building here, both Jose and Kitty have something about greatness or uniqueness or being better or being more than, right? In Jose's case, he's already like this star athlete, and his dad was a star athlete, and then Kitty's a beautiful pageant winner kind of thing, right? Okay, so there's that. So they fall in love. Jose proposes, and they move to New York. I mean, you got to think it's got to be hard for a 15-year-old to leave everything behind and move to a new country.
Yeah, well, you should know, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm here to say it is hard, and it's destabilizing. Yeah. And actually,
for you, it was easier because
right.
you were going to see your mom.
Right.
And you had been to the States many times.
His
and you
situation is even worse. I'll tell you another data point. He didn't speak English. He did not speak English. He learned English going to high school.
Yeah, that can screw you up, actually, because high school is hard anyway. Moving to a new high school is hard anyway. Imagine sitting down, because this is what they would do. And there's some wisdom to this, but emotionally, there's no wisdom to this, that immersion actually can accelerate one's acquisition of language, right? And
the younger you are, obviously.
Yeah, but just imagine you're sitting in class for the first 3 months, and you don't understand anything that's happening. You're completely alienated. No one can communicate with you, and how horrible that you would feel about yourself, and how alone you would feel, how humiliated you would feel.
And I don't know, is Illinois in 50-something? Is it a progressive town? Like, is it a progressive area? No.
Isn't now. Wasn't then.
Yeah. So
progressive meaning like acceptance.
Meaning like, you have this kid who is darker and doesn't speak the language. It must have been tough.
Yeah, but even if it was progressive, if you can't interact, then you're just on your... Yeah, so there was actually someone in 90 Day Fiancé, actually, that exhibited issues related to early childhood having been thrust into schools. And I can't remember her name. In fact, she would go on to sell farts in a jar for people with fetishes about her, because she's a young attractive woman, and she made I can't remember how much, like hundreds of thousands, maybe $1 million or $2 million.
Does such a thing even work mechanically? Like, doesn't it just eventually sediment and not smell? I mean,
so she had and she was okay with it being out there, and she would put something in the jar, like a little keepsake or something.
Okay.
And then she would eat certain kinds of foods that would create a lot of gas, and then she would fart into a jar, and then she would quickly seal it up, and then she would sell those, I think, $100 a pop, and enough people bought them.
This is the kind of stuff that reminds me how many billions of people are on this earth.
But anyway, so she and her mom left somewhere in Eastern Europe, I think, and came to the States, and she's like in the first grade and spoke no English at all. Wow. And she talks about just how horrible it was. Now, she, learned English pretty quickly, but, that's got to mess you up on some level.
So this kid, Jose, moves
we're trying to look for anomalies to look for how he and Kitty could have kids that would be capable of doing these kinds of things.
Right.
So we're just grasping at straws, it kind of seems like.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's interesting. First of all, so far we've learned that in Jose's own mind and reality, he's lost everything.
Yeah.
I mean, 15 is not 2. He knew a life of ease and wealth, and then
particularly, right, if the income disparity was so great,
right,
he would potentially have servants, right, in the house.
Absolutely. And knowing what I know of having grown in the 80s, I grew in the 80s in Colombia, the philosophy of a lot of the well-to-do families was one of, we deserve it, they don't because they're lazy. It wasn't, and it was like culturally accepted to feel this way. It was weird. And so,
but you weren't one of the rich people.
I wasn't, but like I was middle class, but we were light years better than the poor people.
Okay.
As far as and I had relatives, like my great uncles, who definitely exhibited some of the feeling of
So even the regular middle class that couldn't afford servants still saw themselves as superior to the subhuman, super poor people.
Right. And here's, to give you an example of why it's so bad. You said that couldn't afford servants. They actually could afford servants because the servants were the people from the periphery, the rural people that actually had zero money. So the middle class could pay them near nothing and afford them. That's how bad the disparity was. Okay. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because it wasn't just a case of oh man, we are so lucky to have this. No, it's a privileged position where they're aware of their privilege and think they deserve it. Right. And from the accounts, Jose himself, like I said, he was very anti the revolution. I'm not saying you need communism, but I'm saying that in his case, the accounts are that he was very much this is bullshit, blah, 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 and kind of militant about it, right? So when he is sent here, a 15-year-old moving here by themselves, not speaking the language, has lost everything. That's the setup, right?
Okay. All right. Well, good place to take a break. When we get back, we'll continue with the story. All right. We're back from the break. Continue, Berto. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Edge of our seats. Okay. So Jose and Kitty moved to New York. They fall in love. They were like, let's get married. Let's move to New York. Okay. I'm guessing New York looked really attractive to Jose because he had big ambition. And New York is as big of a city as you can imagine to make big dreams come true. I bet you that there was a chip on his shoulder. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever treated someone that either really or felt like they lost everything?
In terms of finances and?
Could be, or maybe they went through a very painful divorce. I'm just thinking of the psychology of someone that's man, I had it all, or I had this thing and I lost it and now I'm depressed because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a fair amount of it actually during the 2008 recession and housing bubble bursting.
I lost a lot during that thing.
Right. So imagine if things were 10 times worse for you in your personal life, and maybe you hadn't established yourself in your career yet. You were a contract worker with IT and were easily not contracted soon later. It's really demoralizing, and it's a bit of a trope for a reason that people in situations like that will consider suicide.
So imagine this. Imagine I'm your client. Let's say this. Okay. I had a business. This kind of almost happened to a relative of mine, but not exactly. But I had this business and it burnt down. The insurance is going to cover some of it, but we are basically ruined. I have to kind of start over. And this was my life. Like, this was my life's work. I don't think I can do it again. Like, from your perspective as a therapist, like, how would you approach something like this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's hard to describe based on a scenario because I would want to know what the client was there for. It depends on the relationship. But generally speaking, the first priority is listening and processing and feeling and being there. There's a grief process that they're going through. And in my book, I go over what typically is healthy for people to do in terms of vacillating between grieving and rebuilding and that sort of thing. And it can vacillate quite quickly or quite slowly depending on the person. But that would be one, is just creating a space for exploration and validation and expression. But also the way that I think about these things, and I'm not alone in this, but I'm the sort of therapist that thinks about existentialism and meaning and purpose. And these questions typically arise in a scenario like this, particularly when you have a career eraser like that, because do you start over again, or do you try something else, or do you just give up, right?
Right.
And the question at the center of it all is, I have one life to live on this planet. Why am I here? I originally thought I was here to do that business thing, and depending on how much their ego is involved in it. But, people typically are, particularly entrepreneurs can be very wrapped up in it. But a reevaluation of that can be very fruitful of, well, I guess I thought the meaning of my life was that business or accumulation of wealth. But when I really think about what I need, I am now thinking that it's about meaning and attachment and love and health and raising my kids to be happy. And money is a part of the foundation to be able to do that, right? Got to pay the bills and put aside money for the college fund or something. But really at the core of it, that's not the core of my meaning. And as I say this, it's like for some people, given how they were modeled or given the sort of strife that they came from that allowed for no talk along those lines. When you're a refugee or you have struggle financially, your parents don't have the luxury to self-actualize that way. It can be a fairly new conversation, and that would be my hope, would be to introduce that topic.
Okay.
It's hard, though, because people can be very oriented, not only just keeping up with the Joneses and their ego and survival mentality, meaning that for some people, they will, legitimately and practically think, well, you need X amount of dollars per month to survive. But for some people, they'll times that by 100, or it'll just never feel enough, right? They times it by 10, and they still feel emotionally like they're on the brink of disaster or refugee status or unsafety or being humiliated or something. And so they're always running, they're always chasing, And meanwhile, they're neglecting their kids, their needs, their health. So it's easier said than done, but that's the approach that I would be having.
Okay, so then what if what I said was actually, okay, so I lost this fire, destroyed everything. So now I'm on a mission. I am not going to stop at anything. I've got to get it all and more back. This is my new life's goal. Like, I'm not going to let anything get in the way.
Yeah. Well, I'd say go for it. It's not my place to, but I would also introduce the questions or the topics of, we have a variety of needs. So it sounds like you know how to meet that need. Now let's look at the other 9 on the list of 10 needs. How are you doing with meeting those needs? You know what I mean? And then we can balance them out. This
is good because I think, as I think we're going to see in a moment, something likely losing everything and becoming from this family stuff and his own psychology, whatever, seems to have propelled Jose to totally outperform his peers aggressively. So they moved to New York. Jose at this point is only 19. They got married in 63. So
my parents got married in 1963. They were 19.
Oh, wait a minute. 1963. What's going on?
Dee-doo.
We are in the Twilight Zone. Okay. All right. So he basically proceeds to start getting all these increasingly better jobs. He started as an accountant, and he's just working for a company, and then he's saving them a lot of money. So then, like, the owner of the company takes notice, and like he promotes him, and he's doing better. But then pretty soon he's able to like leave that job because I guess He starts reportedly having a lot of fights, verbal fights with other people in the company. And apparently a lot of people he works with don't get along, but he is making good money for the company. So he decides to leave and then get a better job.
Okay, well, that's our first data point of personality.
Yeah.
Who knows what that means? Maybe the other people were racist or stupid or something, but...
And this isn't just from one company, as we'll see. It's a common thing. It's hard to work with Jose.
Okay.
But damn, this guy is seemingly great businessman. So that's the theme that starts developing.
Interesting, okay.
He starts getting better jobs. Now, here's some of the things that he ends up doing. He ends up working at Hertz.
Which OJ was famous for making commercials for.
Oh, right. You know who hired him for those commercials?
Who?
Jose.
Jose hired OJ Simpson?
Are you sitting down?
Wow.
OJ Simpson came to the Menendez residence.
You know, when you were describing Beverly Hills, OJ Simpson's house is in Brentwood.
Right.
Which is pretty close
Right.
and basically in the same sort of Richie LA area. And I immediately thought of, kind of like the OJ murders.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a weird small world.
And bizarre. OJ came to their house when he was like recruiting him for the commercials and stuff. So younger Eric and Lyle met OJ briefly at their home.
So in the timeline, OJ would have heard about the Menendez brothers situation prior to him killing Nicole Brown Simpson.
Right.
And
but may or may not remember them, but probably remembers their father because their father gave him a job working in those commercials.
Right.
Because, by the way, their father wasn't just some guy that worked.
So did this plant an idea?
Oh, my God. I don't know. But the father didn't just work at Hertz. He like climbed up he became, at some point, he was the CFO.
Okay.
And then he did so well that they promoted him to be like, at a global level, he was like a global manager for a huge region or something like that. He was like high up.
Wow.
Short of CEO, he was high up in the Hertz company. So he was already making bank at this point, right? And he's getting lots of respect. But again, reports that he's very hard no one likes really working with him.
And meanwhile, he's probably not home very often because he's working a lot.
Probably.
I mean, do we know?
Workaholic, potentially.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Okay.
So this goes back to this thing of like, I really think when I was saying that hypothetical, it was like, I've lost everything, but I'm going to stop at nothing. I think that was going on in his head.
Yeah. And we don't know anything about the quality of his parenting, or that's coming up later?
That'll come up.
Okay.
At this point, he then leaves Hertz and goes to RCA Records. He has zero experience with music industry. None whatsoever. But they hire him because he's a good business guy. He's made money so they hire him and they put him in charge. But he's not like an accountant at this point. He's like in charge of signing acts. Guess some of the acts that he is part of signing.
So
now, this is
early 70s?
Yeah, this would be in the 70s, right?
Okay. Well, I'd be really shooting in the dark, but if
mid to late 70s.
Are they California acts at least?
No. Think global acts.
Jackson 5, Michael Jackson.
They were probably already big at this point, but you're very close. Well, think Jackson 5.
Yeah.
But then it's Jose Menendez.
Yeah.
Think of a group.
Menudo?
Yes, dude.
Oh, my God.
Freaking Menudo.
Funny.
Guess another one. This one's not, I'll give you another hint, not from a different part of the world.
The band is from a different part of the world?
This other band is from a different part of the world. Very big.
Gypsy Kings.
I could have seen that, but it has nothing to do with Latin culture.
I don't know, like Australian band? You talking about Australian band?
They got huge in the 80s. We love them.
Depeche Mode?
Way even more mainstream. Well, Depeche Mode got huge.
You're going to have to give me more hints than this.
But you're right on the first letter.
There's Duran Duran?
Yes.
Okay.
Duran freaking Duran. He had a hand in signing Duran Duran.
Wow.
This guy, think about this. Immigrant from Cuba.
Did he discover them or just sign them? You know what I mean?
Right. No, he's not like, he wasn't an A&R like, oh, I hear good music. I know
he was
music.
Involved.
But he was involved in the signing. So this is an immigrant from Cuba that came at 15, not knowing the language, worked as a dishwasher, just like Bruce Lee. And he got to these colleges, he studied hard. And then he goes to these companies, he goes to Hertz, signs OJ. Then he goes to RCA, signs Menudo, Duran Duran Eurythmics. What a winner.
Yeah.
What an absolute stud. What an amazing individual to model one's life after.
Or cutthroat.
Everyone who works with him doesn't like him.
Yeah. And the music industry is well known for having really cutthroat, awful human beings.
He's reputed to yell at people viciously, workers of his, but someone
the parallels with P. Diddy.
Someone that does like him is his secretary. His secretary always says great things about him.
Okay. Well.
Okay. So anyways, this guy is living the dream, winning the battle, and they move eventually. So now they've moved different places. Everywhere they go, they live in very nice places. They're getting better and better because he's making more and more money. And eventually they move to California. So now I need to tell you something that starts happening though.
Should we take a break?
We could probably take a break. Maybe, in fact, we could reserve this.
Yeah.
Because
the rest of this episode will be for patrons of the podcast for unknown reasons. It sounds kind of dire, actually.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear the rest of this chapter and the full chapters in this deep dive and all the other deep dives we've done over the years, then become a patron. Otherwise, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.